Hey everyone, Tom Butwin here for Premier Guitar. Today we are checking out two very interesting but very different amp modelers. We've got the Blackstar AMPED III and the Hotone Ampero II. For this video, what I'm going to do is we're going to go through in three different sections. We're going to talk about gigging with these two units. We're going to talk about practicing or home use for these two units. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about recording with these units. Let's jump right in. So when it comes to gigging with the Ampero II, the main thing to know is that there are two different modes you can use this unit in. Now, right now I have us in patch mode, and in patch mode, the 4 foot switches across the front here are going to switch between predetermined, pre-built, complete sounds, and that's where this unit really excels. You can use it as a portable pedal board. You can certainly use the effects loop and bring in existing pieces of gear, but where I think this really excels is as an all-in-one solution for your gig. It's got 2 direct outs on the back, so you don't have to worry about a line isolator or a DI. Just bring this unit and you're covered. Now, when you are in patch mode, these are going to be your sounds that are already built. You can, of course, switch through different banks of patches, but when you get into, let's say, A08, you've got 4 sounds that you can go through here. And on this particular preset from the factory, here's what it sounds like. So you can hear these sounds aren't necessarily related. Maybe they work for you. For me, I would want to build something that makes a little bit more sense. Now you could do maybe a set of 4 for each song. Maybe you are just a player who only really needs 4 main sounds. You can set those up so you're not really worried about digging into all of the different tweaking that you can do on a digital floor unit. So that's one way to use it. One thing I do want to note, in this mode, you can see you have 3 parameters across the bottom, and you can customize that because we all know when you get on the gig, there may be things that sounded great in your studio at home with headphones or studio monitors, but when you get on stage, maybe you have to change some things. These are quick access parameters that you can change. That is the downfall of many digital modelers, is when you get on stage at a gig, it's very difficult to make a quick adjustment that you would otherwise be able to make on a traditional amp or pedal board very easily. So if you think ahead and say, oh, what's something that I might need to adjust in this patch? In this case, let's, how about the delay mix? Say I want a little bit more of that delay, just touch it, and you can get more, maybe a little bit less. So that's really, really cool. The other cool thing for gigs that is always going to be present is at the top left corner of your display, you have an output meter. Because output is always something that is an issue on gigs with these modelers. You got to make sure things match, and having a visual representation of that is really, really nice. Now, the other way you can use this unit is the stomp mode. So this digs you into the patch that you've built, and you can see it's visually represented now in your signal chain, which is really cool. You can find out what they've put in the presets, and of course, like I'll show you in just a second, you can actually build your own, which is awesome because maybe one of the presets doesn't do it for you. You got to find your own sounds in here. So when you are in stomp mode, this allows you to control individual aspects of that patch that you've created. And they even color code the foot switches for you, so it gives you an idea of what you're dealing with on screen here and what effects you are changing. So in this case, right now, foot switch 1 is attached to that drive. Now I can kick that drive on. And I've got some really nice control over the individual aspects of this. You can set up tap tempo. Of course, you have the expression pedal as well. So that's, in this case, tied to this wah pedal. You can have it as a volume pedal. Some of the effects have expression parameters that you can control, of course. The sky is the limit with this. It's really, really capable and really, really cool. Now, a couple other really great gig features on the Ampero II. If you press and hold here, you get a tuner, which is hugely useful. Again, an all-in-one solution, so you do not have to bring anything else. Beyond that, the in and out on this is amazing. You can run pretty much anything you want into this. You could have this exact rig, maybe you're switching between bass and guitar, acoustic and electric. You've got 2 inputs, you've got 2 outputs, you can run it in stereo, you can split it into mono signal chains. How you use it is really up to you. There are very few things that this can't do as your full and total and complete rig on a gig. So I did mention creating your own sounds and patches on this. It's very simple, very intuitive, especially with this touch screen to do. I just went to a blank slot in here and I set up a dual amp setup. So I've got 2 amps, 2 cabs, a reverb, a kind of a wet dry sort of thing, and then a couple drives that exist before it. But what you can do is once you have sort of your bass tone, which in this case sounds like this, you can now copy and paste that and use it in patch mode to switch and build some things. So what I did was I created the clean sound, which is that. And now if I step it up, I've got what they have as their Klon style drive in front of those 2 amps. And if we continue on here, now I've got it matched with one of their tube screamer type overdrives. And in the 4th slot, what I did was queued up a solo tone. So this is going to be a pretty significant jump in volume. You'll be able to hear it, and you'll also be able to see it in that level meter in the top left-hand corner. Now again, if you want to see what's actually going on in that patch, you can dig into stomp mode and you'll see that on that 4th spot, I've got some delay, I've got both drives turned on, and I've actually made some tweaks to the amp settings there as well. So this is where it's even more customizable than a real amplifier. When you switch to a different preset or patch, you can actually change the settings on the amp as well, making this a very versatile unit for your gig. Gigging with the Amped 3. Let's talk about this. Now, this is the first thing you have to know. This is literally an amplifier. You can actually power a cabinet with this. It's got a 100-watt amp in it. It's got power scaling. You can go down to 20 watts, 1 watt. To your heart's content. It gives you the opportunity to sort of bridge the gap between the digital modeler direct world and also the traditional amp cab type world, all while maintaining a lot of the advantages that a digital modeling unit has. So let's talk about it again for just a second in the more traditional use case where you're powering a cab. All of the controls we're going to talk about work the same way, which is really cool. You don't have to change your workflow at all, whether you're playing a gig with a real guitar cab or maybe you have another gig you want to bring this on. All the controls are the same, but now you're running it direct. It's the same thing, which is super cool because not every gig is created equally. Sometimes you're going to be in a room where you want a guitar cab and you can power it with this. Other times you want to bring those tones, not change anything and just use it direct. You can do that with the Amped 3. So as you can see on the front of this, there are no screens. So if you're not into the screen thing or digging in digitally per se, and you want to use actual tactile knobs and switches, that's what you have in the front of the Amped 3 here. So we do have 3 distinct channels. And you can run this in 2 different ways. Don't let the simplicity fool you. You can actually run this in a preset mode or manual mode. Now, preset mode is going to allow you to dial in a tone, assign it to that foot switch, clean, crunch, overdrive. You can change all sorts of parameters, cabinets, mics. If you dig into the Architect software that comes with the Amped 3, different reverbs, different EQs, different power amp, tube response settings, you name it, you can decide on that setting in advance, dial it in, and then program it into one of these knobs. But if you want to maintain simplicity, all you have to do is press and hold the boost button, and now you're into manual mode. And what you hear is what you see as far as where these knobs are, and that's how we're going to go about it right here for demonstration purposes. So, clean channel. You get a warm and you get a bright. That was the bright, here's the warm. And of course, that's easily switchable with that switch. You do get global EQ, bass, middle, treble. Think of this just like an amp. You've got volume, gain, master, bass, middle, treble. It's going to work just the same way it would on one of the many Blackstar amps, or any amp really. When you go over to crunch, you do have a just typical crunch, which is what we're set to now. You can go to a super crunch. Again, just by the flip of a switch, go to the overdrive, you get 2 overdrive. And you can now, like I mentioned before, switch through 3 different power amp tube responses. You've got EL84, EL34, and a 6L6. So, really versatile, great way to shape your tone. You have just the gamut of sounds you can get from this. Speaking of the gamut of sounds, let's talk about the ISF knob here for a second. And this essentially allows you to go from a more British to more American tonality and everything you can imagine in between the sweep of the knob. I've had it about 12 o'clock so far, but let's go all the way to the left. Back to 12. And then all the way. So again, on the gig, very easy to swipe through. I mean, you can change the whole character of this thing just with that one knob. It's pretty incredible. Now you do have a reverb on board as well. Totally dry. Here's your reverb. And it's very simple, one knob, but you do have a dark and a light switch. So that was the dark, here's the light. Back to the dark. This really allows you to have this if you want some simple meat and potatoes tones as your entire rig. You really don't need anything else, particularly if the gig suits this sort of sound. You've got reverb, you've got a boost, which you can actually switch pre and post, which is very cool. And then your 3 major tones, clean, crunch, and overdrive, all ready for you on the gig. So a couple other things to mention, if you're gonna take this out and play live with it, you do have the XLR out, so you do not need a direct box. You can just send that right to front of house and they can take care of it. It does have an effects loop, so if you have effects that you wanna bring in, modulation, delay, that sort of thing, you can use this in conjunction with your existing effects that you know and love. Also, very cool, 2 things regarding power on this. We all know just a simple power cable is great. You don't have an external power supply that is necessary for this, just the same as an amp would have. That's IEC power cable. And you'll also notice some extra pedal power slots on here. So if you do bring in one of your other existing pedals, like a delay pedal or something, you can actually power it right from this. So you could put this on a pedal board, power other pedals with it, a tuner if you want. And again, you're not expanding your footprint unnecessarily. You don't need a separate power supply. It's all built in right to the Amped 3. So when it comes to practicing with the Ampero II, you've got a couple features that are really cool and will help you with your practice routine. First and foremost, you've got a metronome and a drum machine built right in. keep yourself from noodling aimlessly and actually play with a drum machine. Now, also, you do have a looper that's built in. I'm not going to attempt this right now because I don't have it on the floor. It's almost impossible to do it with your hands and not your feet. But really cool looper. You can customize what buttons do what within that looper. So stop, play, clearing, undo, and then you can control different effects as well if you would like. But again, a really awesome way to practice with either yourself or a metronome or a drum machine. Now, you do also get a headphone output on this, so if you want to do some silent practicing, that's really great too. You can also dial in all of your tones silently at home and get prepared for the gig, and then practice switching, because that's another thing you need to work on. Not just playing, but when you get one of these units, figuring out exactly how and when you're going to be switching your sounds is really, really important. So practicing with the Amped 3, there are a couple things that make practicing a real joy with something like this. First of all, the entire approach to this allows you to plug in, turn some knobs, and start practicing instead of spending time trying to figure other things out, which sometimes can be great. But if you really just want something to practice with, maybe you're a teacher in a small room and you don't want to have a big electric rig in there, this could be great for that as well. Speaking of a small room, the power scaling, if you happen to be running it into a real cab, is very useful. You can dial that back to 1 watt, and now you have the ability to power that cabinet, but in a more reasonable way rather than the 100 watts that this is capable of. And when it comes to personal practice, it does have a headphone out with a dedicated volume control, which is super cool. It's awesome to be able to practice with the thing you take out on stage. So you can not only dial in your tones, but get used to, again, switching on this. You still have to practice that, figure out what's going to work and what isn't going to work. But also, you don't have to disturb anybody. You don't have to plug this in with its direct output or power a cab. You can just power some headphones, put them on, and play and not disturb anybody and get that same tone that you would get live or in the studio. Now, when it comes to recording with the Ampero II, of course, you can do a lot of the very same things that you do in a live situation, which is really, really nice. I mentioned before, you can bring in third-party IRs, which is great. You've got virtual amplifiers, virtual cabinets, and you can certainly use it like I'm using here with your traditional mono or stereo XLR signal that goes into your audio interface. But the other way you can use this is with the USB-C, and it turns it into essentially an audio interface. And there's some really, really cool things that you can do with that as well. First of all, it means you don't need to buy an audio interface. Continuing on with the theme of the Ampero II is basically everything you need. This will serve as an audio interface for you recording guitar as well. You can even mic an acoustic with it because there is an XLR input on the back. So again, sky's the limit is there. But something else that's kind of interesting is that you can actually divide up the signal in ways that you can't with your analog outputs when using the USB-C output on this. You could send dry guitar to a DAW, so that way you don't have to be committed to the effects and amp choices that you might be making on the pedal, but you can also record those. So maybe you like them and you want to stick with them. You can do that. And you can also update firmware and use their editing software to create all of your presets and sounds on your computer if you would prefer to do that. Now, it comes to recording with the Amped 3. There's some really cool things that we have to talk about here as well. There is software that goes along with this from Blackstar. That's the Architect software. So that's where you can jump in. You can change presets. You can build presets like we talked about before. There are 2 modes. You have manual mode where the knobs are what you hear, what you see is what you hear, and then you can go into some presets, and you can really, really dig into the cab and mic simulations in the software as well. So that's really cool because if you're using this in a direct capacity, and there are a few ways we can do that as well, we'll talk about. That's where the cab simulation and mic simulation becomes really, really cool and very awesome for recording. You don't have to set up a mic. You don't have to worry about the sound of your room. It's all built in and optimized with the Amped 3. Now, there is a switch on the back here, and you can actually have 3 different cab mic solutions and settings loaded there. So here's what we have loaded from the factory. So you know as well as I do how much cabinets and microphones in rooms affect the recorded sound of a guitar. And in this case, you can go in via the Cab Rig and Architect software and manipulate all sorts of different parameters as you record them after the fact. If you're using USB-C, you could do some really cool things there where you record a dry, unaffected signal and then use the software to add in all of the stuff that you want to hear, manipulate different cabinets and microphone placements and sounds. It's really, really cool. But again, you can go back to the simplicity that the Amped 3 offers in the studio as well. You can bring this and your favorite cab, power the cab and mic the cab traditionally. You can do what I'm doing here, which is using the XLR out, which takes advantage of the cab sims, and they sound great and it's very simple. Or you could do, like I said, you could use the USB-C and the software as well as the controls on this to record. The sky is kind of the limit there. But the really cool thing is that sometimes when you're recording and you really just want to twist a knob, kind of like on a gig, you can do that because the basis of the Amped 3 is tactile knobs and switches that get you your tone fast and easy. So one last secret weapon that this thing has for the studio is, again, we talked about it before in the gig portion, but the ISF knob, the infinite shape feature. So this is the knob that allows you to go from a more American tonality to a more British tonality when it comes to the amp. Of course, you can do all sorts of things with the power amp settings on this as well to get those different tones. But sometimes you might have something dialed in you really, really like, but you want a subtle change, a subtle character change. And that's what this allows you to do. And that can be really helpful in a studio if something's not sitting right in a track. So again, that is a one knob way to very subtly but effectively change your tone in the studio as well as when you're on stage. So there you have it, 2 very different but interesting options when it comes to modeling amps and tones in the guitar world. Now, of course, there are millions of options out there, but the Ampero II and the Amped 3 kind of give you the spectrum, the bookends of what you can do. You can go with the complete solution all the way to being an actual recording studio in a box and practice studio in a box with the Ampero II, to something that is more rooted in the tradition of a real amplifier, real pedals, moving air, but still maintaining that digital control and compact and versatile footprint in the Amped 3. So you can imagine there are a million options in between, but these 2 really stand out as 2 awesome approaches and ways to get into the modeling world when it comes to your playing, whether it be on the gig, practicing, or in the studio. Once again, my name is Tom Butwin here for Premier Guitar, and I will see you in the next one.